Hi, this is Matt Denton from the San Francisco Bay Area, and today we're going to look at a compressor for the Introduction to Music Production course. There are a lot of compressors out there, and people like different compressors for their different musical qualities. I have several that I like a lot. Some are free, some are paid for. However, the one I find I use most often, and I think is the most versatile, is actually the stock Logic compressor. Let's take a look at it. You can see that it has all the parameters you'd expect to see in a compressor. Attack in milliseconds. The lower the number, the faster the transients are acted upon. Release, how long it waits to stop compressing after the threshold is crossed. Makeup gain, to add back some of the amplitude you lose by taming the peaks. Notice that you can use the slider or type in the numbers. Compressor threshold, that's an important one, where it begins compressing. Ratio, another important one, how much it compresses. That's how many decibels output per input. We tend to like to keep that between 2 to 1 and 4 to 1. Knee, which changes the curve at the point where the compressor kicks in, which is important for musicality. You can see it changing the graph as I move it. An auto gain option, an auto release option, and in this particular compressor we also have a limiter to set on top of the compressor and a threshold setting for the limiter. You can also change the compressor from RMS to peak. Peak, as it says, acts only on the peaks, whereas RMS, or root mean square, takes an average and acts on that, which gives a more smooth sound in most cases. Now, the most interesting function of this particular compressor is the circuit type setting. Changing this setting changes the way this compressor acts internally and affects the musicality of the output sound. Platinum is the proprietary circuit developed by eMagic, the original makers of Logic. I really like the way this sounds most of the time. It's fairly transparent. VCA is like the classic SSL compressor. FET is like the 1176, and Opto is based on an optical circuit and is similar to the LA2A. Each has its own kind of musicality that you should play around with. Let's take a look at this compressor on a drum sample with the default settings. Immediately you can see the amount of gain reduction in the meter. Now watch as I change from RMS to peak. On peak, the gain reduction is much more drastic as it hits those transients hard. A drum track is full of big transients, so it's much more noticeable here than it might be on strings, for instance. Now let's change to the drum kit preset, which has a pretty good setting for a drum kit. Soft knee, about a 4 to 1 ratio with 2 decibels of makeup gain. Take a listen to the uncompressed, uneq'd loop and the compressed loop to get a sense of how this changes the sound. With the compressor on, it's a bit bigger, a bit beefier, more energy. Now let's change to the FET circuit. Suddenly you can hear that the drum has more life, like you're sitting behind the kit. You get more overtones from the snare. Now let's try a VCA. A little less of the overtones, but now more of the beef and punch we heard in the Platinum circuit, but the kick stands out a little more. Yeah, I'm liking the way this one sounds. Now let's see what this looks like when we add an EQ just to get a look at the waveform. Watch the 200 level where the snare hits. A lot of punch there. Now notice in the FET, the high end is the one that seems to be compressed more. That's where you get those overtones. There you have the stock Logic compressor. You'll learn a lot more about it by playing with it yourself, and of course each setting is going to depend on your project and how things will fit in the mix. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.